Don't manage your team by opinion. Don't manage your team by your personal preferences. Manage your team by your dashboard, and then your team will win. And then put attention on the winning, give recognition, give reward for the winning, make sure that people hear from you when they are winning. And then if they aren't winning, you can always debug it or troubleshoot it, make sure you resolve whatever the problem is. And it's always good if you have a person on your team who's a good troubleshooter to handle those metrics that tend to go down even when they were up before. But this is how we know if somebody's a good performer, right? We have to see their metrics. We have to see their dashboard. And your dashboard has to be a good one.
This is the Being Coachable podcast with your host, Jill Chappie. Get ready to challenge your assumptions, expand your thinking, and walk away with concrete steps to help you level up your leadership, business acumen, and personal growth. It's time to get coachable.
Hello and welcome. This is episode 6 of the Being Coachable podcast. I'm your host, Jill Chappie. And our topic today is metrics versus rumors, how to show leadership of your team. So today we're talking about rumors and opinions, how not to get caught up in them on your team, and how to judge performance on your team in an objective way. So to be an objective leader and to show leadership through objectivity and fairness. Again, welcome. My name is Jill Chappie. I've been an executive coach for 24 years. I work with large technology companies and I help executives who struggle with scaling their teams, assessing their talent, and getting to the next level. One of my sweet spots is to help executives build a dashboard that actually works for their business. But I'm not an operations function and I don't do project or program management. But I do help executives and leaders to simplify what things move the needle on their business. So today I want to give you some basic rules about how to think about your business and your team and how to show leadership on your team. This is a very important topic because what I found recently is there's a craving for leadership. There are plenty of people managing teams, but not all of them are leading teams. So it's very important to distinguish that. So some people are managers. In other words, they guide and direct the things that are going on, but they're not really being leaders or showing leadership. And understanding the difference between metrics and opinions is really important in leading your business. Because without this understanding, you promote people who you like or who have a style that fits you, but maybe not the people who can get things done, get the results you need, or achieve success with you as a team member. So let's dig into why understanding the difference between an opinion and a fact, which is known as a metric, is so important for your business. So here are some of the key points. Number one, most leaders hire people they like or they inherit people onto their team and they don't think much about it. So you probably can see this on your team. Maybe you've hired some people, you've brought some people along from prior roles, or you hire a certain style of person. Now, it's very interesting. This is a little side note, a little tidbit for you, is that what people do on teams when they're leaders of teams is they tend to hire people similar to themselves. But what they do in their personal lives is they tend to be attracted to people who are opposites. Just a fun fact. Not necessarily that important for what we're talking about today, except for the fact that you will tend to put people on your team who are similar to you. Now, this can be fine in some functions. Let's say you run an accounting function. The people you hire are conservative, thoughtful, analytical, maybe a little bit more introverted. In an accounting function, that might be perfectly fine. But what happens when you branch out, let's say, into financial planning and analysis, or what we call FP&A? You've got a different style of team, and you've got a different style of leader and a style of worker or employee or team member or whatever you want to call it that you need in an FP&A function. So most leaders hire people they like, or they inherit these people onto their team. So sometimes, and you may have seen this too, you get somebody on your team and their style doesn't fit at all with their role. What do you do about it? Normally, most people just keep them and kind of move on. And then the second thing that happens in this cycle of events is performance review time comes around and they give good reviews on the people they like and average ones to the ones they don't, or they figure out how to write it. Oh, the person's meeting expectations or whatever. And it's like life goes on. Right? But this is not really the way to show leadership and management of a team. Remember, leadership would be being out front, being strategic, thinking about what's most important on your team, setting priorities. Management would be guiding, controlling, and directing what your team is doing. All of these require knowing where your team is going and the goals of your team. And so that means if we're just taking the people that we inherit and keeping them the way they are and not doing anything about it, then it doesn't really resolve what we need. So this performance review time comes around. They give good reviews to people they like, average ones to the ones they don't. Life moves on, but this violates the basic rule of management, which is when you call out and recognize good performance, you're going to get more of it. So the good performers have to be called out. They have to be recognized for their good performance, and then you'll get more of that great performance. And the corollary to this is that when you recognize bad performance, or you pay attention to it, in other words, and you reward it, you get more of that too. But more on that in a little bit. We can have preferences about who we like on the team, so don't get me wrong. Let me give an example. So let's say your team, everybody on the team really loves to talk about March Madness. They're basketball fans, and they really want to discuss March Madness and do brackets and have fun that way. And then you hire somebody onto the team, and that person doesn't really like that. They're not interested in basketball, but they're great at their job. You could see that you might be tempted to hire somebody who fits more with the culture of your team rather than somebody who can perform on the job. Now, there's an importance to fitting into the culture too. So I'm not saying there isn't. But the first thing we have to look at is the person going to be able to perform on their job, and therefore can we reward them for that and then get more of it, and then the team grows, right? So that's what we're really looking for. So sometimes our preferences can do us a disservice. I'm actually going to give an example both directions on that. So hang on for that. But what we want really is we want all performance to be based on metrics. So how do we determine who our good performers are and give them credit, and then stay objective about the performance of each person on the team? Well, you probably already know the answer: good metrics. Now, sometimes people think they have good metrics and they actually don't. So I like dashboards personally, and I have a unique way of doing them that really helps determine who's doing what and if they are successful, and it really clarifies the priorities of the team. So you may or may not have a dashboard that really works for you. What I find a lot of times is that people don't actually have a good dashboard for their team. And so they don't necessarily know where the team is going or how to measure the various things on their team. This relates to module 1 of my course that's coming out soon, where I'm going to dive in deeply to how to do a dashboard appropriately for your team. But that's not the topic today. But it does relate to a common statement that you've probably heard, which is if you can't measure it, then it isn't true. And that is, it's never been more true than today, because if you think about how, let's say, social media metrics are, for example, think about the dashboard you can have on your social media metrics. You might get them from LinkedIn. Oh, here's how many people viewed your posts. Here's how many people checked you out on LinkedIn. And then you can even go to higher levels of LinkedIn to find out how you're doing on all of your stats that are even more complicated ones. So these are examples of a dashboard, okay? But you've got to have a good one for your team. You just have to. It's kind of one of those have to have it done type of situations on a team if you're a leader of a team. Okay, so I want to give you a couple of examples so you really understand what I'm talking about here. So I had a VP of product that I was working with, and the VP of product was working with the head of engineering on a specific new product launch. So there were no particular metrics about the progress towards the launch itself. And just as a side note, I find in general, engineering teams are very good about measuring things like progress, code written, products launched, keeping to timelines. Project management in general is a strong suit of an engineering organization. So I would say in general, that is working very well. It's fairly black and white, the way they do things. But I also find that sometimes these same teams, they don't want to keep metrics on things that are negative, like technical debt or even debt retired, which would be a little more positive, or bugs in the system. You could always keep bugs removed as a stat, by the way. It's sort of a QA type of stat. Obviously, I've worked a lot with engineering teams. I've been doing that for 20 years. And I love engineering teams because I love the fact that they're usually very metrics based. In this particular case, the problem was that the launch was a specific product on a specific date, and it was very cross-functional in nature. So on the engineering piece of it, it turns out there was this one person lower in the engineering team who was pulling most of the weight on getting things done. The leader of the engineering team would report that person's stats, and they were always good in terms of progress. But he would give his opinion upward about like the performance of the team as a whole and kind of report this person's stats as the stats of the whole team. So long story short, this top performer lower in the organization didn't get credit, his boss did. And that's pretty demotivating. It's also not the truth of the matter. So with a really good dashboard showing what each person contributed to each metric, this problem could have been solved. And then you reward the high performers, and then you get more high performance, which is always what we want, right? It's an overachieving, high performing team.
Are you hitting a wall as a leader? Do you need an outside perspective to gain clarity and direction? Jill Chappie has over 20 years of experience as an executive coach, helping leaders get unstuck and achieve their goals. She offers straight talk combined with empathy and humor to challenge your assumptions expand your thinking, reveal your blind spots, and equip you with concrete action steps. If you're ready to level up your leadership and get coachable, click on Leadership Assessment at becoachable.com and then email to schedule your readout. Cost is $99 to get your results. Invest in yourself and your growth. You'll walk away feeling informed, empowered, and ready to implement change. Let's get coachable.
So I'm going to cover dashboards, like I said, very thoroughly in my course. It's coming out soon. It might be already out by the time you see this video, and if so, you will find those links on my website, which is becoachable.com, and you just go into the right side of the tabs and the course will be there. But it's not launched yet. So if you're watching this right away, right out of the gate, it's not there yet. But I will cover dashboards very thoroughly and how to avoid this problem of the wrong people getting credit, incorrect metrics, etc. So I want to give you a second story that's a little more positive. So I had a leader that I worked with who would constantly kind of bring a team along with him. So from prior roles, and he kind of kept using and reusing these teams as he moved through his career because they were very productive teams. So this is the flip side. He would reward the productive people and get more of it. In fact, he had this one particular woman who worked for him and she was amazing. So she would pull everything together, run the team really well. And she was actually one of the people in charge of running their dashboard. Fantastic. Great leadership. So the caution is if someone's not productive, you need to know and either fix it because something can go wrong also. And this is what she was particularly good at, his second in command, is that she would watch the dashboard. And if somebody who was normally a productive person started to have an unproductive moment and something was happening with their stats, she would rush right in right away and find out what happened and help them correct it. So really paying attention to the dashboard, you can catch things like this that are on fire or need to be corrected right away. So the other side of this, of course, is to not give anybody recognition if they don't deserve it, or to kind of ignore lower performers and you eventually kind of manage them out of the organization. Now, many of you have probably used a 9-box for performance management. If you haven't, you can just Google it, look up what a 9-box is for performance management. It's great. It's a great tool. But what it actually measures is what you're thinking, mostly is what you're thinking about for that person in the future. So it has 2 axes. On the bottom axis, it has how the person is performing currently, and it just has it as low, medium, or high. I don't know how you would assess this without a dashboard, by the way. So I hate it when people don't tie their 9-box a dashboard. So if somebody's performing on the dashboard, you know, is it great? Is it okay? Where is it? So you'll be able to plot them on the 9-box more accurately. Then the other side of the 9-box is the y-axis, which is potential. So this is how the person's going to do in the future. So what impact might they have going forward? Now, you can't necessarily tell that from past performance, or can you? Well, the best predictor of future success is past performance, but it's only a prediction. You can sometimes see that there are certain people who really want a lot more, so that willingness is very important, and that can help you plot things on the 9-box. So I like to use these tools together and in conjunction with each other. So you have a great dashboard, you see how the person's performance is, it makes them easy to plot on the x-axis of the 9-box. And then on the y-axis, which is the future potential of the person, then that's where it has a little bit of judgment or subjectivity to it. But nothing wrong with that. Remember, we're talking about thinking about the person's future potential, so there's going to be a little bit of subjectivity there. But if we can add those two things together, I think it works out much better. I also have one more, maybe somewhat unpopular opinion about performance management that I want to share with you right now. And my unpopular opinion is don't use MBOs to determine what you put in a performance review. Yep, I said it, MBOs. I'm not a big fan, honestly. Most companies where I see MBOs used, MBOs end up being this sort of muddy statement of what they think you should be focusing on. It's kind of priorities, sort of, but sometimes they're not coordinated with other functions or even with your manager. And it's just a statement. Like one of the MBOs that I saw once was to move the needle on website efficacy, or it was something like that. That's great. How do you measure that? So then the person comes to their performance review and it's just like a he said, she said. Oh, do you think I moved the needle on that? Oh, yeah, I think I moved the needle on that. Okay, do you think I moved the needle on that? I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll listen to you because you have the best visibility into this area. So I don't think MBOs work that well unless they're really carefully tied to a dashboard. So an objective is a wonderful thing. But if it's the actual thing that got done or not, or whether the objective is met or whatever, that is what determines the actual performance. So the objective has to be the actual thing being accomplished, and it has to be measurable. And we could go into SMART goals here. That's fine. That would be a better way to set an MBO, is using SMART goals, because then it would at least be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time limited, which is the one that most people leave off. Like, improve website conversion over what period of time and how much do you want it to improve, as an example. So MBOs tend to be a little too squishy in my mind. KPIs tend to be better. KPIs, if they're done correctly, can be a very good metric to put onto a dashboard. Now, what I find though is that most people are not displaying their KPIs correctly. I prefer a line graph. I want to see linearity on things. I want to see, how was it compared to year over year last year? How are you doing at this time last year on this particular metric? And then you can see when you've got dips, you can see when you've got rises. It actually shows the linearity of that particular KPI. Much better way to look at it. There are some other ways to show KPIs as well, but please, this is my constant warning to you about dashboards, and you'll hear more about this in my course. Please do not use a tiny print spreadsheet to show your KPIs. No one understands that. And then it takes, a master's degree in analytics to understand what the heck your spreadsheet means. And it doesn't mean much as a dashboard. So don't do it that way. So I always think about line graphs. Pie charts can sometimes be good, bar graphs, it depends. But put things in graph format. Picture's worth 1,000 words, and I want to see your KPI graphed. All right. So these are the main points that I have for you about metrics versus opinions. So don't manage your team by opinion. Don't manage your team by your personal preferences. Manage your team by your dashboard, and then your team will win. And then put attention on the winning, give recognition, give reward for the winning, make sure that people hear from you when they are winning. And then if they aren't winning, you can always debug it or troubleshoot it, make sure you resolve whatever the problem is. And it's always good if you have a person on your team who's a good troubleshooter to handle those metrics that tend to go down even when they were up before. But this is how we know if somebody's a good performer, right? We have to see their metrics. We have to see their dashboard. And your dashboard has to be a good one. So if you haven't done some thought work about what should be on your dashboard and what your dashboard should look like, again, that will be coming later in my course and I'll be able to help you. But just get with a good strategic partner, think through what should be on your dashboards, what are your KPIs that need to be on your dashboard, and in what graphical format should you be showing them for best results. Okay, so think about those things and then judge your team on how they contribute to the dashboard. They can have their own dashboard too that rolls up into yours, but that's a subject for another day. Okay, so if you enjoyed today's podcast, which I hope you did, please follow me on LinkedIn at Coachability or at Jill Chappie. You can do both. You follow me personally or follow my company. And please do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. I'd love to see you here and to show you more podcasts. And of course, lots more things coming for you in the future. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 6. This has been Rumor versus Metrics. And I hope you learned a lot today about using dashboards and treating your team fairly and showing leadership of your team by knowing what their priorities should be in your dashboard. All right, thanks, and see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Being Coachable podcast. I hope you found value in today's conversation. If you have any follow-up questions or want to continue the discussion, visit our website at becoachable.com and click on Contact. Join our mailing list to receive offers for reduced cost leadership assessments and team building sessions. You can also find show notes, past episode transcripts, and more resources on the podcast tab. I'll catch you on the next episode as we continue to maximize our potential and get coachable.